Game Elements said the busy builder is now live, streaming miniatures.
Alright, we are back. There was no extraction today. They misheard, and instead it was an evaluation. The extraction will be next month. First, we're going to start out by throwing on a real quick anti-slip using some primer and a stippled brush. Now I'm feeling the tackiness. This doesn't have to be particularly rough. In this size, it's more of like a sandy feeling on the surface. Oh yeah, we are way overexposed. See if that shows it better. Yeah, there we go. Fortunately, this stuff dries pretty quick, and by the time we get to doing the base paint, it should be cured well enough. I really should have applied it earlier in the build, but you don't always need to. I had a sneezing fit before the stream started, so gonna be a bit sniffly for a few minutes. Glom that on there a bit thick. Oops. That's alright, we'll just spread it around more. For those in the U.S. that have a 3-day weekend this weekend, I hope you're having fun. The real question is, was your 3-day weekend Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday? That reminds me. Hey Steven, how you doing? Gonna have to clean this brush in a second. It's getting a bit too loaded with the surfacer. And again, this is a basic technique you can do on any vehicle to add this texture. Nothing advanced. You can do it with liquid cement. You can do it with even thick enamel paint. It doesn't necessarily have to be thinned out putty or primer of some sort. Like I said, you can do it with liquid model cement. You just got to be a bit more careful with it, that you don't soften a lot of the details with it. Brush. Hello. And I just hit my elbow on the table. That felt so nice. Not really. Hey George. So yeah, I was expecting to have a extraction done today. But when I got there, they had only scheduled me for an evaluation, which kind of throws a wrench into the work. I should be okay. The actual procedure won't be till next month. As long as it doesn't begin acting up. Now, this is the one thing that's hardest to show off, because the gray color matching the plastic. You could even recreate this with acetone if that's all you have laying around, because that stuff will also bite into the plastic. So how's everybody doing overall? Having a good weekend? Well, at least this means I'll be able to enjoy my week off like I was originally planning, and instead of having to worry about nursing a hole in my jaw. So today the goal is get the base camouflage on, paint some preliminary details, clear coat it, get the decals on, and do the detail wash at least. There's not a lot of decals. So we should have another good 3 to 4 hour stream under our belt. Tomorrow, we'll be getting the initial groundwork laid out. So cutting the foam, placing it, and mixing up the first layer of the celluclay and applying that over it. And as that's drying, we'll mix up the mud mix for the vehicle. Start applying it like we do the mud in the jars. But I'll show you some different stuff with that. Stuff that I think might actually work a little bit better, because my main gripe with the stuff in the jars is that it's a bit too uniform. And that it seems to dry to a slightly rubbery consistency. I even have a limited number of stowage pieces that I've pulled out. I may or may not use them all. We'll figure it out as we go. There we go. Hey, at least getting up for my appointment got me an early start to the day. Wife wanted to go thrift storing, but I told her it would be better to wait till Friday if she wanted to do that. Frankie, no. Don't scratch the couch. Thank you. We haven't really had any opportunities to get out and do anything. And we will Friday. Okay, got a good clean on her last time. My hand's too dry to get a grip on the glass, on the bottle, to open it. A little more shaken up. And in this, we're using exclusively Tamiya paints for the base coat. Now on airbrushing, if you're a beginner in that, don't be afraid. Just start using it. And the easiest way to learn with an airbrush is to mess up. You know? Have it not go your way and figure out what you need to do to make it go your way. You're not going to learn how the tool works if you don't use it, right? That's how I learned. I looked at what other people were doing, looked at how my airbrush worked, and went from there. I started out with the tester system, where you screw the bottle onto the bottom of it and you had the propellant can with the hose. So basically a glorified spray paint can. That would freeze up after 10 minutes of use and get all kinds of condensation and crap on it, and you'd have tons of water in the hose because, you know, Florida, humidity. I'm sure a few of us have worked with that before. Then after that, I moved up to the dreadfully nasty, idiotic, and almost totally unusable Aztec system, which some people apparently still use. Got my first compressor, which is one of those testers ones, look like a doghouse. Now, it worked well enough. Then I started moving into what one would call real airbrushes with the Badger 150 and other airbrushes like that. And trust me, the difference is night and day. As far as different brands, that's more of a personal preference thing, depending on what features you like and what you want. Just don't give in to hype, you know. If possible, test out a tool before you use it in terms of the airbrush if you can. Not always possible, but it can happen. Then on the subject of priming models, you don't always need to. Most modern, I shouldn't even say most modern, most model paints are designed to adhere to plastic without a primer. So in essence, they are their own primer. Others would tell you otherwise, and depending on the brand, they might be right, they might be wrong. Tamiya is a cold lacquer, or an alcohol-based acrylic almost. It bonds extremely well to the plastic. Vallejo not so much, so it might need a base layer to help it bite until it cures. But all in all, for the general model builder, you're going to be fine spraying it on just like I am. with no primer. You see how I'm using nice, long, even, overlapping coats? That's what you want to do for a good initial base layer. Most vehicles are not going to look like that chipped up, faded out mess that you see most people trying to replicate, unless they've sat outside in the English weather for 40 years. A lot of the references people use for certain armor pieces. Hey, model student. They don't tell you, but the pictures were taken, like, say, some of the tigers and panthers that they say that are all chipped up. They've been sitting out in the sun 3 or 4 years after the war ended. You know, in the French countryside. It's not the day of. You can tell by how they're stripped down a lot of times. But generally, you're not going to have some ashy-looking, faded, chipped mess. The vehicles weren't around that long in the actual combat area for that to happen. And yes, I will die on that hill. Case in point, everybody always goes on about Whitman and his Tiger and all that. You realize the one he died in wasn't the initial Tiger he was issued. The Tiger he died in was like the 3rd Tiger that he had. It wasn't even his. The one he was assigned to backed into some rubble at Villers and was stuck. They were issued those vehicles in about April of 44. So you're looking at May, June, and July, you know. And they only saw action from June onward, and that was limited because of how the Tigers are held back at the beginning. So those vehicles only saw really 2 months of use on the front before they were knocked out. So you mean to tell me that the paint was so bad that it faded and chipped that quickly? Nah. Even with the limited resources by that time in the war, no, not on that important of a vehicle. There is artistic license, but what you see that looks like that is generally because of an abandonment or a general lack of maintenance, and it's been sitting outside forever. And I just spilled paint all over the fucking model. Great. Why didn't I see that? Yes, you too will do this. Easy fix, though. Take the airbrush, don't pull back on the nozzle, just use air, and blow it off. Spread it around. If you still persist in having a large blob, dab it off, don't wipe it. Then just go back with a fresh layer and blend it in. And if it really made that much of a mess, put stowage over it. Yeah, I didn't notice I just got a nice big goop right on that mirror, though. But that's not a reason to... I mean, if you're having a bad day, it's a reason to put the model away, right? With Tamiya paint especially, if I hadn't noticed that and it had gone on to dry fully, a little bit of Windex on a Q-tip, and you can actually remove it. Tamiya loves to melt for Windex. Weirdest damn thing. It's a tough as nails paint, unless you get an ammoniated window cleaner on it. I'm just going back over, making sure I got all the different angles and dangles on some of the more fiddly bits. The antennas, smoke dischargers there. Up under the skate rail. There we go. That's a good base coat. Am I coming in as well as I was yesterday? Oh, see around the hatch there, you got a little bit of light gray showing. Still enough paint in the airbrush. And get the tops of the lights here. Didn't get the downward direction, just the upward. That's better. I don't know if anybody else heard, but Robert Duvall passed away today. He was in everything from Apocalypse Now, Days of Thunder, Gone in 60 Seconds. Frankie, you're being weird. Next, we're going to lay in some NATO black. I want to paint the rims for the tires. Almost every LEV I've seen, they're always black. Occasionally you'll see a sand one or a green one, but damn near every LEV 25 I've seen, they're always NATO black. And I've got a pretty good walk around of a real one. Name the Death Star, which is funny because the decals for this kit include that name. If it had the shrouded exhaust for the service life extension program, I would have put the Michelin tires on it and had basically an exact replica. Okay, NATO black. Trying to discern the pictures as well as I can, because the trumpeter destructions are terrible for this model. how can I give a demonstration of this? I'll use a piece of cardboard. Airbrushing camouflage freehand. So go ahead and pull up a picture of a modern camouflage vehicle. Abrams, Leopard 2, LAV, what have you. You'll notice that the camouflage has a good, clean edge, but it is not sharp. It's still ever so slightly feathered. They're mainly sprayed at a factory, so they've got really good control over the painting equipment there. But for doing it by hand, using a masking putty or anything like that, can result in too clean a line, and also too inconsistent a line. I've seen some people that they use it, and it goes from a really nice, sharp, clean edge, and then suddenly an extremely feathered edge, almost like there's a pocket that they didn't paint on correctly and it just feathered under it. So I'm going to show you kind of a couple do's and don'ts. That's kind of thick. Give me a second. A couple do's and don'ts for hand painting camouflage. I'll show you on this cardboard because it'll show it off better. Okay. Make sure I'm getting it the right line. Yep. Good sharp line. So as you're doing your camouflage, when you're laying in your pattern, right? Get your line. You notice how the edge closer to the airbrush is sharp, but the edge further away is faded, right? I'll give you a more exaggerated example, like that. It's because the angle of the fan is overspraying. So when you're doing your initial pass for your camouflage, you want to do it like that for the initial, and then do the other side of the pattern much the same way, always making sure that your outside edge is the one closest to the airbrush. That way, as you go through, you can fill in a lot more quickly. There's no reason to do this kind of stuff when you're painting the model. There's other ways to get a modeled effect that are a bit more effective and less time consuming. We can even go over some of that on a different model. Actually, we'll go over that on the aircraft build. But that's how you get a good, tight, freehand airbrush camo pattern. Just be mindful of how you're spraying and where you're spraying, and just keep it tight and slow. Get my reference picture back up. Okay. Also, periodically clean off your needle, because as you get paint drying on the needle, it'll make it spray wider and more diffuse. So just every now and again, check your needle. Make sure it doesn't have a lot of paint clogged up on it. And you don't always have to be perfect either. You can mess up. It's okay. You can always repaint things. And in the field they usually touch them up with spray cans anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're going for a more factory look, or a fresher look, that's how you want to do it. Just got to do your best to make sure that you got the fan edge away from the edge of your camo. Looks like... right down through there for that. And take your time, you know. References help immensely. You don't always have to be perfect on it. There's always minor variations between vehicles. I'm kind of trying to lock in the pattern as I can find it right now. And if you're unsure of where the pattern goes, just kind of start sketching it in. If you have a good reference material, just use that as a guideline. And just start loosely sketching it in. So you feel that you've got something that matches up well enough. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. I forgot to do something. But first we can do this. I forgot to attach the photo etch heat shield. So that's fine. That's no big deal. But I do have to get it done before I'm finished with the black paint here. I do have a pretty good job on this side. Okay. This goes like that. Okay. Get down here, paint it in. Very rarely do I get a clean view of that area. Alright. This comes up here. Something like that. But even on the real one I'm using as reference right now, the paint job is very inconsistent on it, showing that it's been repainted in the field or at the unit level a couple of different times. Yeah, the jerry can is going to get painted a different olive drab color. In this case, it's not even on the vehicle when I'm painting it. Okay. So let me hang up the airbrush for a sec. I need to get those shields taken care of. First, actually. And we're probably going to come back and paint more green real quick after I get the black done, because I noticed some areas I could have gotten a little better. Okay, let's back you up for a sec. Get the inside. Get the outside. Outside doesn't matter as much as the inside, since we can always paint it again when we do the camo. But I just want to have that initial layer down. And I keep blowing it away too, which is always fun. Clean off the needle. Just hang this up for a sec. Get a glob of super glue. Put some on the brush, on the back. And basically, the only contact points are these little feet on the photo etch part. And that's all you need. Just be sure you don't put it on upside down like I almost did there. Again, right here. Get that snugged on there really well. So we're going to go ahead and spray the area we think needs to be NATO black. And then we'll come back with the green and touch up some spots. Kind of got it a little too patchy right through here. We'll finish off the black patterns. And we'll come back and touch up the green. Right about there. One end goes up this way. And then back. The other one goes up that way. Under here. So yeah, we'll come back with the green in the end and touch all that up through there. back down this way on it. Where's that overhead view? No. Actually, let's do this one. Again, probably far from perfect, but it'll look right in the end. I'm gonna have to go through the rest of my pictures and find better views of that area. Okay. Good enough. It is the A2 version, but it's the same hull, same overall scheme. Just it has frames for a ceramic overlay armor on it. This one doesn't have the armor on, so I can see the base camo. There is. Yep. I went stupidly wide on that one. That's all right though. This patch here comes back like that. Yeah, I can't use the smoke discharger as a guide on this one because they moved it. We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah, that's actually pretty close.
The model student 20 said looking good now.
I'm trying. Just actually extend that down a little bit. Like that. I don't know if any of this lower hull camo is going to be visible once we're done with the dirt and mud, but you never know, so throw it in there. If you know it's not going to be, then don't waste the time. I don't know, so I'm wasting the time. Okay. Need a good look at the top, though, to get the pattern. The only one I've got of this area for some of them, the engine deck and the radiator are open, so I can't see how the pattern goes over the grills too easily. I can see that there's some, besides tip dry. Yeah, it's supposed to start raining this evening, and that's going to turn right into snow. There we go. That. All back through here. Still nothing for that area, so I'm not even going to try it. I just have to keep looking and see if I've got a clean look at the roof at some point. This I'll be able to tighten up when I do the NATO brown. Some of my guesswork's actually pretty on the money. Just a lot of times the roof is so filled in with junk that you can't make it out. I might be able to on this though. Yeah, let me get the back door painted first. That'll help guide me on some of this. Could have sworn. There it is. Okay. But freehanding camo is a lot easier than most people make it out to be. It's probably one of the easiest things you can do with your airbrush once you get to know the tool. The hardest part of it is learning your paint. Its consistencies, its habits, how it responds to the area you live, because humidity and temperature will play a factor in how well it sprays, especially if you're using acrylic. The drier the environment, the quicker it'll dry, because the air just sucks the water right out of it. So like right now, it's supposed to start raining, but it's in the mid-40s. There hasn't been a lot of rain or humidity lately, so our air here is quite dry. Like, I haven't had to empty my moisture trap in weeks. Okay. me see if I got one more shot of the roof before I go. Because I'm pretty certain that the instructions for this are 100% wrong on the camo pattern. Yeah, I'll just have to give it a go based on what I can see here. Okay. Alright, and then this one comes like that. Back around like that. Okay. And I'm trying my best to work in the camera. If I start drifting outside of the field of view, please let me know. There's one. Yeah, this one just goes straight across. Not like straight across, but if it comes back around over this way, and then like that. Yeah, that feels right based on the picture I've got. Problem is, it's hard to tell since the roof is dusty. It's got the anti-slip texture, and the sun is behind it, kind of blanking out. It's reflecting off a concrete floor. So the light behind it's brighter, so the aperture on the camera is tighter. So what I'm seeing is partly the color demarcation line and partly the actual paint line, the edge of the paint where it was sprayed on. Aries, thank you for the resub. Oh, the support is very welcome. What the hell? I'm going to make a decision for myself here, and we're just going to tie that pattern together through there. And through there. Yep, subscribing is not mandatory, but it is greatly appreciated for whoever does. That's on the Twitch side. Subscriptions on YouTube are like follows on Twitch. They're free, and they are also appreciated. Yeah, I think I'll live with that. Alright, let's clean out the black paint. We'll reload the green paint for some quick touch-ups and fixes. And then we'll load the NATO brown. Looks like I've been staying within the camera pretty well, though. There's not a lot I got to touch up on the green side. So first we're gonna cut the camo on the heat shield so it matches up. And it'll touch up where the tweezers scraped off the paint, so that now matches. Get up under here a little bit better. And along here. Those could have been colored or covered by mud. It still felt a little too light to me. And then down through here. If there's any place else I may have missed, hopefully the black wash will get it. Oh, see the smoke dischargers right there? Missed that. Corner there looked a bit light. It's never too late to go back and touch it up. Now that the model's not primarily light gray, I could probably bump the gain back up. And I forgot to paint the wheels. That's fine. I can do that after. After I get the NATO brown done, I'm probably going to take a stretch break. I can feel my knee tightening up. And these are all the Tamiya paints, easily available at most shops. There are a few pictures of these in sand, but not too many. If I do one in sand, it'll probably be the mortar one. Hopefully this stuff sprays well. A lot of my NATO brown is ancient since you don't use as much of it. freehanding camo is all about just practicing your control, getting your paints thinned out right, and knowing your air pressures. And I'm not talking exact numbers either. I'm talking like, okay, you know this paint likes to be thinned this much and sprayed at this PSI. There's other people out there who have complete mathematical breakdowns. That's fine, that works for their area. They might live at sea level. Or they might live in Colorado where they're a mile high. What works for them probably won't work for you. Okay, so this comes down along the side here, around the light, like that. And this, that very edge. Good references are always your best information, though. Never use another person's model as reference. If at all possible. Sometimes I understand it can't be helped, but in general, yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. Never use somebody else's model as reference in terms of, like, detail or finish. Went too hard on that one. Got a little bit of spiders. Clean off the nozzle, or the needle, I should say. this. Should just go like that. Yeah, this is one of my older bottles of NATO Brown, so it is drying a little chalkier than I like. But that will actually be corrected when I go to do the clear coat, because that'll basically wet all the colors and make them look like they would be fresh out of the bottle or out of the can. Okay. There we go. We're almost done with the red here, or the red-brown. Just a couple more itty-bitty patches to go. That one, that one, that one. I think that's everything. I know I said I'd take a stand-up, move-around break. Still plan on it. I need to get the rims painted first. Then we can put the airbrush away for a little bit. Oh no, we'll still have to clear coat it, but still. Before we clear coat it, I want to paint the things like the jerry cans, the smoke discharger caps, some of the other little odds and ends. Set you back over here, get you out. You know what? I'm going to take the break. My knee is really throbbing. Then we'll come back and paint the 8 rims. I need to move around a little bit. And if you've been sitting here with me the past hour and a half or so, you also should get up and take a quick break and move around. So, be right back. Alright, we're back. We're back, we're front. Wait, no. It's another reason we like Tamiya paints. They dry relatively quickly. If you're not blowing your stuff halfway across the table. That is a term that gets overused so much in certain circles these days, it's funny. I know that's why you use it because of that, too. But it doesn't always work perfectly. There. Well, okay. We're just going to finish the rest of these off, and I'll get that back and clean the cat hair off of it after it dries. That thing just zoomed right off there. I wasn't even spraying that hard, and it just took off. No, this paint job so far, the airbrush has been fine. It's the paint and the temperatures. My wife had the heater turned up, so it was 75 degrees in the house. Yeah, she's a frickin' lizard. And how are things going in Alberta? It looks like we may actually get some late snow here this week. It's supposed to start raining sometime this evening and then turn to snow overnight. Then snow for the better part of the morning and then turn back into rain, which means it won't stay around very long. But every day this week has snow in it, as far as the forecast. So I picked a good week to have off. That way I don't have to drive in it. So what's your furnace doing? Is it gas or electric? Obviously gas, but you shouldn't get a vapor lock. It could be your thermal switch. So it'll ignite, just not stay going? That almost sounds like an airflow issue, like it can't, the mechanism can't cool itself properly. It could be your thermocouple as well. But I'd check the exhaust vents. Might have a dead marmot up there, eh? Let me get that rim before I clean this out. Yeah.
At the model student pointing set, tried the UV resin for the lenses on the cockpit instruments as well. It is awesome. Yes, the furnace guy blew the water out of the exhaust. He has to change the run.
Ah. So it is a breathing problem. Poo, 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 poo. Still trying to think of how I can go about displaying the fuel truck too. There was a aftermarket kit to allow you to open up the back and have all like the fuel pumps and everything. I couldn't find it anywhere. It would have been nice to have it refueling like a Humvee or something. Giving the airbrush a good clean out. Now, the details. Get that. Get that. And that. It's a bit late in the day for coffee for me, unfortunately. Well, I don't really have to be... Wow, I squirted out way too much of that, but that's okay. I mean, it's not like it's going to spoil my bedtime or anything. But, yeah, after a certain time of day, it just gives me heartburn. Today's stream will definitely not be as long as yesterday's. We'll try and pad it out. Yesterday's was a good run, though. I had to make up for Friday, right? I remember the first place I saw, or the first thing I saw an LAV in, was actually the Toby Hooper remake of Invaders from Mars. Because somehow Canon Films had actually got the Marines to help with the film. So yeah, there was a real LAV in the sandpit scene at the end. Those are water jugs. They'll be tan. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud on what needs to be what color moving forward here. Yeah, I saw that. It looks really good. But do you see how doing the clear then the wash allows you to kind of clean the wash up before you go back afterward? And it really sharpens things up. A lot of people just put the wash on over the flat, and the problem is that stains it. Sometimes you want that, but a lot of times you don't want that staining effect. You just want the details to pop. And that helps the details emerge a bit better. Let's get this color out of here. Because all the time I see people, they go in and they airbrush highlights on the panels and stuff. I'm like, your cockpit ain't getting that faded. Depending on how you park the plane, it's only really going to get that much sun at 12 noon. There is artistic license, yes. But when you're popping and locking like that, eh. There. Just taking care of some of the stowage items. Waiting for the jerry cans to dry. Then we'll throw some UVLS clear on it. Decals and a detail wash, otherwise known in the bespoke circles as a pin wash. Because we have to have such a descriptive term for everything these days. Oh, another video I saw show up today. Somebody was talking about pigments. Dark brown, touch green. I might have to sell them soon.
Fancy like
But, no, they were talking about pigments, and they're like, you can get cheap pigments, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. So, raise your hand if you know what a pigment actually is. Just go ahead, raise your hand. Okay. I'll wait a minute while you guys catch up if you'd like, because I know there is the delay. Common misconception. Pigments and pastels are the same once you grind down the pastel. They are not. I personally don't like using pigments. I think they're too aggressive, they're too heavy-handed, and not very subtle. Because it's just straight up. Yeah. They are just straight up color pigmentation. That's all they are. They are the material that makes up the color of the paint or whatever it is you're using. There are no binders, there are no carriers, there are no anything. Yeah, it's basically paint cocaine. Yeah. Grinding up a pastel is not the same as a pigment. Pastels still have the binders and all the other things that hold them together in pastel form and allow them to work. Yeah. So when you hear somebody going, oh, you know, I'll just grind up some pastels, that's the same as pigments, it is not. In my opinion, pastels can actually be more subtle than pigments because of the fact they are not so pure in their makeup. I have a pastel palette I use from time to time. I personally don't like using pigments because they're too strong. They're too, you know, blam. You put your brush in it, boom, there you go. They stick too well. They're too finely ground. They bind to the paint much too easily for what they are. It's like using a sledgehammer where you need a ball peen hammer. Yeah, true compressed chalk type are harder to find than oil pastels. You are not wrong. They can be found. But as long as you have one that's, you know, I'll kind of show you what I use when I go to do any kind of like light dusting type work. Honestly, I prefer to use oil paints in that regard. So like say we're doing this up and we wanted to make it dusty. You've seen me do it. Hell, look at that. You see how the bottom edge of the fuel tank and the actual vehicle fuel tank have kind of a dusted effect? That's just airbrush. You pick your earth tone that you think is going to fit the rest of the scheme on the vehicle, lightly mist it on. If you do it right, you can actually go back and streak it and make it look more weather worn. But then you apply all of your earthworks and stuff over it. Pigments, when you apply them with a brush, can also even turn into like brush strokes on their own. Is there a time and a place and a way to use them? Yes. Do I like using them? No. You can use them if you like. I don't like them. They're too much. They're too strong. But yeah, when you see, I can't use that because that is mounted to a holder. Actually, I'm trying to remember where I put my pastels. Those are not my pastels. Those are my graphites. But in a sense, the two may react similarly, but they are not the same. Okay, where is it? Looking for my American green. Because, you know, there's no other kinds of greens in the world. They gotta be American. I need a soundboard. Every time I say American green, I can hit the eagle sound. Field gray will work. But even the chalky type pastels have binders and other solids in them which affect how they spread and how they work. One cot painted. I don't know if I'm going to give this one a cooler. Oh, I'm not even going to get started on that guy. He is very uppity about his accolades. I will tell you that. After watching my channel for enough, go back and listen to how he describes what he's doing and the how and why that he's doing it. You start to get the feeling he's talking because he likes to hear himself talk. I hate to say it that way. As a viewer, that's the effect I get. Not every AFV needs a cooler. But yeah, if we're discussing the same person, then I heartily agree with you that he gets a bit verbose when it comes to the what's, how's, and whys of what he's doing. I wouldn't say that, but and that this goes back to part of the reasoning why I kind of got away from certain communities in terms of model subjects, because personalities like that tended to overpower other people trying to enjoy it, and kind of, they're fun vacuums. They suck the fun out of it. They think they're helping and teaching and showing the way, yet you feel like when they say it, they say that their way is the only way. And that's kind of not the case. And that really began to take over certain modeling groups that him and others really, you know, took root in. And there's other people out there, some aren't here. No, they're lacquers. So there's a learning curve right there. They're lacquers. But also, there's a certain style that he likes to replicate that Ko Yokoyama does. He likes to remain well within that safety net of the sloppy that Machining Krieger embraces, which there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it's kind of boring? But I just kind of I kind of dislike those who blatantly say, if you're not doing it my way, you're doing it wrong. You know? So I'm just throwing some shadows in here on the wrinkles. Yeah, they're coming through. A bit overexposed in the lighting, but they're coming through. I mixed together olive drab and the RLM2.
Uses hot stuff. I am not much of a fan of the crusty, shitty mob.
Well, that's just it. There's one where he did... It was the Mark 44. And he went to do the cast texture on it. And what I saw at the end wasn't cast texture. It was a vehicle that had been poorly maintained, had 30 years worth of paint on it that was chipping off and flaking off, that had consistently just been painted over. Not a cast texture. He went too rough with it. That's my opinion, though. That's from my experience being around different armors and seeing it. Even Russian cast metal isn't that rough. Russian welding can be that rough, but Russian cast metal is not that rough. M60s are not that rough. If you're producing castings that rough, you need to not be in the metal casting business, especially if it's for armor. But when they tout what they do as the only way of doing it for a given subject, that's what begins to put me off as a participant of that community. When they kind of claim a lordship over it. And just like this, what I'm doing here, if you guys know a different way that you enjoy doing, do it. If it works for you, do it. Like yesterday, I just suggested you try something. And you did. If you liked it or not, that's up to you. But I'm not going to say you're wrong if you didn't do the way I suggested it. I just said, hey, here's another way you could try it that might work out better for you in that size. You know? And that's up to you if you had results with it or not. And if you didn't, you could tell me if you didn't. And I'd be like, okay, sorry. But you have your way of doing it too. But there's certain people out there that they will take what you do, and since it's not the way they do it specifically, they will call your work garbage. Not so out and out like they are getting in your face going, your work is garbage, but you can tell by the verbiage they use that they won't abide other people's ideas. Just like the whole thing with the model defect and stuff like that. I don't personally like that technique. For how I do things, I think it is a garbage technique that wastes a lot of paint and time and effort. And I know there's easier ways to do it, which when I get to the F-15 build, I will gladly show that. But that's because that's how I like to build it. If you want to do it, that's all up to you. But those Gaia Notes paints and all the other stuff, you know, no thanks. Yeah, I get that they're trying to color match the original colors that were used on the original Machine and Krieger models, like the eggplant and all that stuff. That's fine. But that's also something that's crept into the studio scale community. There's companies out there, well, mainly because Flowquill doesn't exist. I know of Calamity, and again, I'm not impressed by the style. It's too much, too busy. I like detail, but even, who was it? The guy who did the mechanical designs for Dragon's Heaven, I think it was. Mikimoto? Not Mikimoto. Motoko... He did some work in Venus Wars alongside Yokoyama. What's his name? I don't mind that busy anime style with a lot of the organic curves. I'm just not a fan of the Calamity style. It's, you know, 20 years ago when he really came out with his stuff, it was unique, but now it's become kind of meh. Just trying to throw a slightly deeper mix on the underside edge to give it more shadow. God, who was it that did those designs for Venus Wars and Dragon's Heaven? Kobayashi! That was the name I was searching for, Kobayashi. It seems like Kobayashi style turned up to the nth degree. Which works for some, but to me it just seems too busy. But that's my choice.
The model student pointing said that Regal is a weird mech fair. Sure, shadowing shows up even on Cam's feed.
So, but that's my opinion. It's just it's a style that I really don't go for. Kudos to him for designing something so complex and actually being able to cast it in resin. How's that? Okay. Alright, let's get a good little scrubby brush out for some dry brushing. There we go. Here's a good little scrubber. So I threw on the shadows using a slightly darker mix, but I was pretty sloppy with it. There's a point to that, though. We're going to go back with the base color and just go over the top. I think that may have dried out already. Whoopsie! I need to see if I can find more of this Vallejo RLM2. I've had this bottle for like 12 years. Okay. So this is just to go and clean the flats up a bit. Still leaves the color down in the shadow areas, but it brings the specular highlights back to the wrinkles and the flats. This is going to be laying directly on top of the vehicle, so a flat light direction like that is fine. Just try not to go too much on the underside. You want to keep that shadow down there. And then get a drop of white.
But the model student pointing says stowage adds so much to armor, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The casket of Regal is excellent. I got mine for $150. I have been offered $400.
There we go. And just a little bit of white added to the base color just for a highlight right on the very top side. See? It's not much. It doesn't have to be. You just have to really just pick it out, you know?
But the model student pointing said the magic dry brush.
But dry brushing is such an old technique. If you use it right, it can work well. Or what was it the guy said in The Golden Child? Yes, but you must know when to break the rules. And I know a lot of stuff that I talk about, you know, I take this hobby very personally. Partly because it was one of the few things that connected my father and I back when things were really rough, way back when. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but there was a troubled time. So this is something I hold very dear to myself. And that's probably why when I encounter people that should all over it, in terms of how you do it, it really puts me in an aggressively opinionated mood. Especially nowadays. When there's so many people trying to push how they do things as the next best thing. And it really is impacting the people coming into the hobby. It's no longer treated as a hobby you do for fun, which is what I try and do. Like when the camera's not going, I'm just sitting here throwing shit together, guys. I really am. I'm always working on something. Whether it's snap together, a kit from a 40-year-old anime that nobody watches anymore, you name it. And I'm really just trying to show off how I do it, as a way that others could do it. If I ever come across as hypocritical that, you know, you should do this, you should do that, somebody just smack me in the face, please. Let me know, because that means I need to pull back and reevaluate. There really is no wrong way. But when I see some techniques and things being touted as the only way, that really puts me off. When I know they're not the only way, and I'm tired of hearing it, I'm tired of seeing it. There's people out there that think just because they're a character on Ko Yokoyama's box art, because you kissed his ass 20 years ago in Japan, then that's you. Don't put your expectations on the rest of us. Am I getting a little introspective? Yes. But it's not without reason. Okay, which way am I going to hang this? Okay. Alright. Is that going to go that way? No. There's a drape downward. That'll go over here then. Okay. So if I get really heated and adamant about something, it just means it's very important to me. And I know it's not something that everybody needs to look out for or anything like that, but when you're discussing hobbies, it's one of those things where there's certain people out there that you're not building your model right if you're not using my products. Fuck you, you know? I've heard that so many times recently, and it's... yeah, it really just pisses me off. Sorry about that, but it is what it is. Now, I want to test something, just to make sure this stuff works, and I don't have to make a run to the dollar store either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. Where did I put my shit? I had it up here yesterday. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. I want to make sure this stuff's compatible with the paint that I'm going to use, and I want to see what color it turns. Okay. Yeah, this stuff's kind of old, so it's dried out, but you can add a little bit of water, bring it right back to life. Now in this case, this is just Gorilla Glue brand spackling. This is just a technique that I've used in the past. And this time I'm going to use Mission Model's Dark German Chocolate Brown. It's an almost black brown, but this is kind of what you want, because this will mix in with this, and that'll act as a lightening agent. So yeah, I need to add a little more water because it has become very dried out. The paint can also be a thinning agent, but you want to rely more on the water at first if it's this dry. I might have to go buy a fresh bottle tomorrow, or today. So, do this. Alright, see? But you see how this is much... Here, let's get this in front of the camera a little bit. And let me knock down the gain so you can see it more clearly. But you see how this is much smoother, more spreadable than, say, the stuff that I had been using by Vallejo, right? Look at that. Throw in a little more of this. It'll thin it out a little bit, but if you wait a few seconds, it starts to thicken back up. See, that's about the color you want for your average earth tone. But if you want to mix it up a little, make it uneven. Clean out your brush real quick. And we're just going to do a little test. I want to show you how it reacts on these tires too. You see people do this with the pigments all the time, but you can do it with this stuff too, because you can thin it out to almost like mud paint. So you just paint it on your tread, right? Now this is ultimately going to be on a dirt path, so I'm not too concerned about that. But if you wanted it on, say, a paved road, you just take off the excess with your finger. It has almost the exact same characteristics as the stuff in a bottle from the major companies, except it's a little bit smoother, a little bit finer. Right? I'm not going to do it all on that. And we're going to be putting some down here anyway, so let's thin it out a lot more. Okay. Get our tweezers out, and let's do the test, the flick test. It's got a bit more body to it than this stuff does. So even thinned out, it reacts more like mud in scale wood. So it'll fling, it'll spatter, it'll flatten, you know? This is going to get a lot more on it, so this is just a good test. Because I'm curious, I want to see how this is going to work. I haven't used this technique in a while, but since you've got all these mixed up different colors in here, see, we got some light and dark. You can give the impression of wetter or drier mud. You can go back with clear coat afterwards and flick it on as well for more wetness. There's going to be a lot more on there than just that, though. And it's not showing up at all because the camera's so far away. I'm going to lower the camera. We're starting to get to more intricate work like that. And gain. Where are you? There we go. Oh, of course. Yeah, autofocus. Back up a little bit. Wow, what is going on here? This isn't technical troubles like the other day. This is... There we go. Come on, work with me here. There you go. Yeah, you can see how it spatters like that, and now that it's thickened up a little bit, you take a square brush, right? Come along, grab some of it. And you can determine this even at the start. You take that square brush and just start stippling it on. Just like the expensive stuff in the jar, you know, the stuff from Vallejo and VMS and MIG. You stipple it just right, it comes out the same. When we get further into it, though, I'm going to show you another thing you can add that's kind of cheap to get. You can get it at pet stores. That's chinchilla sand. That's if you want more of a gritty body to it. Yeah, you just slowly work it in layers, too. Let's see, right there. Come on, focus. There we go. But you can see how it's kind of starting to build up that look, that texture you want. Let's go back and just get some raw, dry stuff. Yeah, I'll see if the wife wants to go to the dollar store. I need some fresh. This is going to be too hard to work with when I get down to it. But yeah, just a little bit of wall repair spackle. And your paint of choice for an earthy color. Mix it thin, mix it thick, and just start applying it just like the big box stuff. This is what we used to do back in the day. Even up till like 2009, this is what I was doing for mud. Won't go too far with it. This is just a test. And I want to see how it reacts when I clear coat it. See if that helps with giving a wet effect to the mud after the fact. But yeah, you just stipple it on. And being that it's not so heavily bodied as the Vallejo stuff, I think it's got a much more scale appearance and reaction to it. It dries a lot flatter in tone. You can also just drag it along the bottom to simulate where you've gone over some dirt hills. Crap like that. See, a nice good thick mix right there. That's about what the European earth is like from Vallejo. Or the dark earth. The European earth is more reddish, more Vietnam-like. Yeah, just add it along here. Because all 8 of these wheels always smack up into this, that's for sure. And don't worry if it goes over the side, because even on the real thing it splatters up over the side a little bit. And it will lighten up a little bit as it dries, as you can see there. Come on, concentrate on the tire. There we go. And if you mess up, this is the real nice thing. See how it's kind of down in there? You can come back with a wet brush and remove some of it still. So it's even workable after it's slightly dried out. So if you think you got a little too heavy, you can go back and kind of slurry it around. Thin it out a little bit. Oh, look, we got too much there. Whatever, shall we? Look at that! You cannot do that with the Vallejo or MIG stuff. Once that stuff's on, it's on. A little more dry brushing, then we'll spray some clear coat. It really does, and I find it more controllable than the other stuff. You guys have seen me use the Vallejo stuff, so it's not that I can't use it. It's got its uses, it's got its purposes. I just got it to see how it differed from this, and I think I might find a happy medium of both in my work in the future. Because even using it on things like the fuel truck here, I found I was going back and having to add too many other tones to it. Like the tone is too rich. This, the way it dries, that feels more naturally like a dirt or dust or mud texture than the other stuff. We're going to apply it a little more heavily down here too. But you can really... God, I hope autofocus wants to pay. But yeah, you can see how it really just... that feels more dirt-like. It doesn't feel like I painted on something that kind of resembles dirt. That actually feels like dirt, you know? And the spackling is water soluble to a degree until you seal it. So if you don't like it, you can continue to work it. Because you ever get your walls too wet and it starts sagging? Same thing. It's basically just gypsum paste. All right, let me see if I can demonstrate that on here real quick. So let me find a place where I applied it a little thicker. We'll go back here. But you just keep working it like this, and you can make it streak, you can make it collect at the bottom, you can even completely remove it if you wanted to. Look, I just made a clean spot. And that stuff was essentially dry. I'll demonstrate again on this darker area so you can see the contrast a bit better. So going forward, I might actually use this a bit more because it's less permanent until I seal it. But the other thing I like is you can control it better. I just want to get this stuff out as an example. And I'll just show you what's in the lid because it dries with a semi-gloss sheen, for one. It's rubbery. And once it's fully dry, you can't reactivate it with water. You can scrape on it all you like. You can do that with it, because that's pretty much dried out. Yeah. But it's got a uniform, like, grit embedded in it. See here? It's not coming up as easily with water. You have to scrub at it a lot harder. Especially the dried areas. This is still kind of damp. But once it's fully dried, I've never been able to remove it. And it doesn't rinse out of your brushes as easily. Whatever they use, the micro balloons or whatever it is in it, it clogs up at the base of the ferrule and swells your brush. Music real quick. So I'm just looking for something. I don't feel like bagpipe fusion right now. Yeah, we'll go with that one. But you see how that's kind of cleared out right there? I like that you can adjust this mix and work with it more. And out of all the acrylic-based ones on the market right now, I feel that you can't do that with them. You can with some of the enamel ones, but you got to be careful you don't do too much with the thinner that it ruins your base coat. See? But this means you can also work in thinner layers and really adjust things how you like it. You're not limited to, oh, mix all this together, slather it on, then scrub it off, you know. No. So I'm going to throw a clear coat on this. Kind of bouncing around right now and losing focus, but I think we're near the end of the stream anyway. Once the clear coat's on, I can do decals. There's not going to be a lot. Do you guys want to see me do decals? I can do them. If not, I can do them off stream real quick later. Today's kind of a bonus day anyway. Get my wheels together at least. The only thing I'm putting on is like the 2 name decals for Death Star and some lift here, tie down here kind of stuff. Nothing terribly exciting. And from the vehicle I was using as a reference, I could almost get rid of them and not use them except for the Death Star ones, because I didn't notice anything like that on it. Yeah, I think we'll treat today as a bonus day. I'll seal this up, and I'll see if the wife wants to go to the dollar store since she's off today, and just go out and do some stuff with her. Where's my gloss clear? There it is. Because while we're out, that'll give the clear plenty of time to really catalyze and solidify. And I'll see how this stuff reacts. Oh, that's a good view of it. There you go, see? Well, it's, what, President's Day here? I think it's President's Day. I forget which sale day it is. So it's technically a federal holiday. If I hadn't just decided to take a week off, I'd be at work right now. Oh, this clear is not going on very smooth. There you go. So the clear I'm using is the Createx UVLS. You can get that at Hobby Lobby and most decent hobby stores as well. Some people don't like it. I do. Works fine for me. I don't know, I think the Createx stuff's got a bad rap. It's better than the Mission Model stuff. Yeah, I think the spackle mix is the way to go. It really just works. It's more forgiving. How's that? It allows you to play around with how you want your dirt to look. And I know that sounds weird, but even that's just as important as getting a dirt texture on, is how you want your dirt to look. So tomorrow will be detail wash, dull coat and start of actual weathering and wear. We'll also throw together the beginnings of the display base. We'll get the foam forms down and hopefully at least get the celluclay base layer on. So we can start laying out where the road area is going to be as opposed to the snow areas. Things like that. Plot out where the gate and fence are going to be, the tree. Bunch of things like that. May even see if I can figure out a way to do some tulips. Kind of mimic the weather that's going to be here at the time, because our tulips are coming up outside. And it's just about to snow, so kind of use the real world life and mimic it with the art. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with how the camo turned out on this. The spackle test worked out really, really well. I'm comfortable moving forward with that, and that I'm not going to make a complete ass out of myself trying to show it off. And being that this is going to be a wintry scene, I'll probably do the damp effect like I did on the M60 again. There's a lot of good flat vertical surfaces to really get that on, and some areas where I can pool water up on the roof, or at least make it look pooled up. And for the snow on the base, we're not going with the frost fluid this time. We're going to use baking soda, white glue, and water. So if you need to get some baking soda and PVA glue, you got a day or two to get that, if you don't have it already. And I'm not worried about spraying the clear on the tires. It may actually help, since the tires themselves have been feeling a little greasy. This might be an older edition of the kit, so it could have some tire rot going on.
The model student 20 said I'm using saving gel long.
Shaving gel for snow? I don't know if that's going to work well. I don't even know how that works. Is it just because the gel hardens and turns into a white film, basically? Woo, close. Just trying to make sure this is really good and uniform. Ah. Yeah, but now that the colors are all laying down right on the model, yeah, that camo actually turned out pretty tight. I'm very happy with that. Yeah, sorry it's not a 5-hour stream. We're almost at 3 hours though. We're 2.5. Tomorrow probably will be a lot longer, since we have more things to work on. I want to try and handle things in sequence, so I don't want to get too far ahead and kind of work myself into a corner where the thing I'm doing only takes 30 minutes and the rest of the day is written off, you know? So if I can combine getting the foam forms on the base ready, let those dry a little bit while I'm working on the model, and then wrap by using the celluclay as the layer on it for the earth foundation, that should give us a pretty hardy stream, instead of just doing weathering or just doing the foam and the celluclay. Alright, so we're going to wrap it up for today. Wish it could have been longer. Yesterday was good, but that was a run. I got a better plan for tomorrow now, though, because of it. We got the painting out of the way. Everything's base coated. Stowage, not so much. We'll cover that when we get to it. That's more in the final phases anyway. So yeah, tomorrow, groundwork, beginning of mud work and weathering, and detail washes, things like that. And I'll show you how I do the sandy, dusty dirt effect with the wash as well, without relying on this stuff. This stuff's good, but it's got its limits, and it's only limited to one color. You can mix it with others, but they don't always jive. You sometimes get a greenish hue out of it. I can show you that on the other LAV. But yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out, and I will see you all tomorrow, where we hopefully take another good leap ahead on this.